Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Inside Game podcast. This episode is in association with Raymond Waters at the Old Coach Inn Castleblaney. And here's a word from Rays Tanning and Wellness in Auchnacloy.
Rays are the first on the island of Ireland to offer the Red Wave Pure Red Light Therapy Bed, a cutting-edge recovery tool now being used by top athletes worldwide. Whether it's muscle soreness, inflammation, joint stiffness or speeding up overall recovery, red light therapy is becoming a genuine game changer. So if you're training hard, coming back from a knock or just wanting to stay injury free, call into Rays and experience the benefits for yourself. Rays Tanning and Wellness, helping athletes recover faster, perform better and stay in the game.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Inside Game podcast. Episode 27 will just run as a solo effort today. Please remember folks to check out all the platforms and give a like, a follow, a share or subscribe on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube and Spotify. It really does help to keep the content coming. I once again want to give a big shout out to Rays Tanning Salon in Auchnacloy, Waters, Old Coach Inn Castleblaney and Eugene Crenny Sports Media. Their continued support of the podcast is greatly appreciated. So the last time I did a solo podcast like this was episode 14 and a lot has happened since then. Firstly, at that time the Facebook page had around 1,000 followers and now it's up to over 4,000 followers. All I can say is a massive thank you to everyone who has followed along to the Inside Game platform. When I see that sort of upturn over just a few weeks really, it's been very encouraging to keep delivering more content and further building the brand. The series of guests since episode 14, one thing I know is that for me personally, it has been so enjoyable talking to all these people who are so passionate about Gaelic football, passionate about their respective counties and clubs, and I'm really grateful to every single one of them for being willing to come onto the show and talk. The podcast is, of course, primarily based around Armagh football and views from the guests of Armagh's opponents, and that has led to inviting on Armagh and Crossmaglen legend John McEntee, Gaelic Games fan, TV host and Dublin man Aaron Prendergast, former Kerry coach and RTE pundit Mike Quirk, RTE journalist and Armagh and Drummondtee man Nell McCoy, former Armagh goalkeeper Patrick Morrison. I invited on my brother and passionate Armagh supporter Ryan Craney. I had former Fermanagh star Ryan McCluskey, All-Ireland finalist with Down Kevin McKiernan, Armagh star and Calavia manager Stevie McDonnell, Monaghan stalwart Desi Moan ahead of the Ulster final, Clonard man and local pundit Mark Beattie, and then Gaelic Mystery Kit's very own Stephen Henry, who is a Derry man. All of these podcasts are available on Facebook, YouTube and Spotify, and whilst they are often focusing in on previewing or reviewing Armagh matches, if you're at all familiar with the format of the show, you'll know there is a get to know you feel with all the guests, and those parts at least will not be time locked. The Inside Game platform isn't just podcasts, there's also been a number of articles added to the social media feeds in recent times. A lot of the time the articles are based on running themes of comments seen on online forums or below social media posts where people maybe have ideas or opinions on certain topics, and I like to weigh in with views of my own on that, and I try to put forward in a measured and balanced way on those. Now, of course, some people may read them and not find it to be measured or balanced at all, and maybe even point blank disagree, and that's totally fine. But I promise you, the intention is there to try and find a reasonable standpoint on the topics, and I'll maybe just talk about some of those topics and articles now. The first one was called, Do Amateur Gaelic Stars Need Breathing Room? This came after I saw Oisin O'Neill waving his teammates off the field right after Armagh had beaten Down in the Ulster semi-final, as if to usher them away from the frenzy of selfies and autographs and handing over of gloves. And I just wonder, should we be affording our players a bit more post-match freedom to celebrate their victory or process their defeat? Like maybe some players do enjoy that side of things, but it's unlikely that those who don't will ever come out and say so. And, pitch invasions have been a part of our games, but the selfie side of it is a relatively new phenomenon. And personally, I'd prefer the players were given a bit of space afterwards. Some will agree, some will disagree, and that's no problem.
Just a shout out and a thank you to Raymond Waters at the Old Coach Inn Castleblaney for the continued support of the podcast. If you're ever in Castleblaney, or even if you're not, why not visit the Old Coach Inn for a fine dining experience and entertainment in their friendly bar and lounge. That's in the Old Coach Inn, Castleblaney.
Another article was called "When they say Armagh are consistent, this is what they mean." And I'd noticed a comment online from someone saying Armagh were a consistent team, and I'd seen a bit of backlash to that from others who seemed to take great offence by it. And so I delved a bit deeper into it, and consistently, most certainly, is the order of the day for this Armagh team. The article drew comparisons to the American football team, the Buffalo Bills, in the 90s, who reached 4 straight Super Bowls, and that's the equivalent of reaching 4 straight All-Ireland finals in Gaelic money. And they lost all 4 of those, and whilst they didn't pick up the silverware, they were a remarkably good side who showed great consistency levels to keep them getting there. And then, if you consider Armagh, 4 straight Ulster finals, and now finally getting the silverware in the 4th. The top of the group stage, every season it was in place until the format got renewed. This team has typically operated in the highest league division, apart from being in Division 2 for one season, which resulted in a straightforward promotion anyway. And then in 2024, there was, of course, the winning of Sam Maguire. The 2026 championship campaign hasn't been much different. 5 wins out of 5, and they remain undefeated, along with only Westmeath at the time of recording. And even the defeats in the last 4 or 5 years, with the exception of Kerry, there's barely been a losing margin of any more than 1 to 4 points. So look, it is a particularly consistent era of Armagh football. Another article was called "Biding Their Time, How Young Armagh Stars Earned Their Place." This one focused probably mainly around 3 young Armagh stars: Tomas McCormick, Cian McConville and Dara McMullen, but for sure it's meant towards others as well. Something I find interesting that you will hear commentators and co-commentators talk about how a player is new into the squad this year, but with Armagh that's very rarely the case. These players will actually have been scouted by McGeady and co at a much younger age, maybe 2 or 3 years previous to the commentator making his comments, and they're brought in to develop and progress under county level conditions. What are the chances they'll see any game time in their early seasons? Probably very unlikely. But with the right guidance, the right plan in place, and with the right desire on their own part, at some point in the future these players turn into major contributors for Armagh. It's a way to overcome the lack of trophy success at underage, a way to circumnavigate the conveyor belt of talent that the likes of Tyrone appear to be producing at underage. And it's clear to see that the next generation are currently being moulded in similar fashion. The likes of Padraig O'Keefe, Ryan and Owen Duffy, brothers from Collaville, Callum O'Neill of Clonagale, and Aaron O'Neill and Thomas Galvin. These young lads are not seeing much game time right now, but with understanding and seeing the pathway of the others in front of them, who aren't much older than they are, they could certainly become county stars for years to come. And one last article was an article called "Embrace the Hate." Now, this was more of a tongue-in-cheek article. It came in the aftermath of the Kerry Donegal Championship game in Killarney, where there was a lot of drama both on and off the pitch. Something I picked up on social media was that Armagh fans had weighed in with their own 2 cents worth of the David Clifford and Jim McGuinness incidents, and it led to vlogs on the likes of TikTok where people were declaring their hatred for other certain fan bases. Now, for what it's worth, I don't think anybody really hates another county's entire fan base, and even if they do, it's only within a sporting context anyway. But the purpose of the article and the real gist of it was that even if you do be told your fan base is hated, you should probably embrace it, because usually it means that you're a relevant team. If the day comes again when Armagh aren't quote unquote hated, it's probably because they aren't a real threat to anyone anymore. And that takes me on to the current Armagh team and where I think they are currently. If I look back to 2002 when Armagh won the All-Ireland for the very first time, that team will forever be etched in Armagh folklore, but for many the team in 2005 was even better. Of course they didn't win the ultimate prize. An excellent Tyrone team played a big part in that as well, but that team was excellent. I felt they were probably a bit more dynamic than the O2 team. Still had a lot of the best players carried over, but also added quality from youth, from the 2004 Under-21 All-Ireland winning team. And in many ways I feel the same about the current 2026 team in comparison to the 2024 All-Ireland winning team. Again, the 24 team will go down in history. They brought so much joy to the whole county, and I look back on 24 with nothing only admiration and respect for everything the players and management achieved. But to say it again, I think the current Armagh team is even better. Now, there is indeed the caveat that the rules of the sport have completely changed from 24 to now, and that brings about significant differences. It is of course fully understood that if this Armagh team continues to progress, that the biggest challenges are very much ahead of them. They're very much in front of them. And it's also fully understood that they may ultimately not go on to lift Sam Maguire or even reach the final. But just look at some of the features of the current side. Pace, running power, elite fitness and conditioning levels, speed and transition, scoring efficiency, leadership all over the pitch, options off the bench, retention of their own kickouts in a game where it is much more difficult to do so, a long list of players who have improved in the last 2 years, intelligence, extremely well coached. And these are the sort of attributes regularly spoken of by pundits and podcasters nationwide. The power rankings will shift depending on results, but regardless, Armagh are always appearing somewhere in the top 3, along with the other 2 elite counties, Donegal and Kerry, and it's pretty good company to be in. Niall McCoy on the Inside Game podcast a few weeks back said, "Now that the All-Ireland's in the bank, I'm just enjoying the ride with this Armagh team." And whilst me personally, I'd absolutely love another All-Ireland, one that I do believe is very achievable, I sort of share those sentiments of Niall's. I just find them very easy to follow, even when they don't win. The last thing I'll briefly touch on is the upcoming game against Louth, which has been set for Inniskeen. Round 2A is, of course, a first drawn out of the hat, gets home advantage round, so more power to Louth on that one. There's speculation that the Louth County Board were okay with moving elsewhere, but the management team felt Inniskeen gives them their best chance, and that's fair enough. I genuinely do feel for those who are completely locked out of this one, though, from both counties. It seems a bit against the ethos of the GAA, which is owned by its members, that it would exclude those members from attending a Round 2A championship match. The likes of All-Ireland finals obviously face the same problem, but I'm sure we all understand the difference between the biggest days on the GAA calendar compared to Round 2A. Regarding the match itself though, Louth and Armagh, they'll play against each other for the first time ever in championship history, which is incredible really. Louth are definitely a dangerous outfit and chose to play in Inniskeen for a reason, and that reason is they're well used to it. Maybe Inniskeen's manager John McEntee, former Armagh player, current Armagh supporter, will open the gates and let Armagh get a few training sessions in it beforehand to get them used to it. But this is a great opportunity for Armagh to reach a 5th All-Ireland quarter-final in a row and will rightly be favourites to progress. But even if that fails, all isn't lost, such as the beauty of reaching Round 2A. There is a second chance to go again 1 week later in Round 3. And best luck to the lads in Inniskeen. So that's going to wrap up this solo podcast. Make sure to follow along on the various platforms and look out for more content and upcoming podcast guests. And thanks again for listening to the Inside Game podcast.